Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
If Professor Moriarty feeds you crumpets on the holodeck, are they real?
Alan Seiler,
It is green.
and Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And we're joined by a special guest this week. Nick Wright is joining us. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
thanks for having me. Appreciated the invite, and yeah, I'm really honored to be here.
Yeah.
So
So
I've been wanting to invite you for quite a while, and opportunity finally. I mean, because usually we're doing episode reviews every damn week, and finally we have a little break in episodes, and we're able to do other things, and it's great to be able to have the opportunity to have you on.
Yeah, such hardship having a new Star Trek episode every
my
week.
gosh. If
Oh,
only they could
sometimes-
be more considerate and put out less
Yeah.
content.
sometimes two
You
in
gotta
a
have time.
week we're put upon.
We were used to like a decade or so between series. So.
Right.
Nick, it was either you or we could discuss something really original like the naked time or the Corbin light maneuvers. Nobody's ever talked about that before.
No,
Right.
no, never.
So, Nick, I first met you on Track at Dragon Con,
Mhm.
and we have done a couple of panels together. And
Yes.
so, tell us a little bit about how you got your Star Trek start. What's your Star Trek origin story?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess like a lot of people, I was a kid in the 90s. I got into Star Trek when a family friend showed us the TOS movies. And I especially, I think it was the part where Kirk's on Rurapenthe and he has that fight with the alien guy. And he like kicks him in the knees. And he's like, man, that thing had knees. And then she's like, Captain, not everyone keeps their genitals in the same place.
Right.
Wow.
So
that was
like,
Star
I was like,
Trek
oh,
entree.
this is fun. Like, oh, this is fun, but it's also something that you can, it's a serious show. It's like, you have to think about it too. So I was like, I caught a random episode of Next Gen playing, and it happened to be Rascals, which is the one where they're all turned into little petulant children. And I was a petulant child at the time, so I was like, man, this is my jam.
Man, I can totally identify with this.
Nick, I tell you, you are a true fan because your entrees in the track are kind of odd to me, which is awesome. I'm thinking Balance of Terror, something like that.
Rascals, man, that's the jam.
Right on.
It's
Right
Kirk
on.
gets somebody in the nuts and Rascals.
Yeah, Kirk kicks somebody nuts, and then they turn into kids, and I'm sold, man. This is great.
That's awesome.
So I started watching the show, and they were running reruns at the time, and I didn't have a VCR that I could program or anything. So I was watching it on this little 13-inch black and white TV in my room, and it would come on after the news at night on this channel that I got half the time. So I'd it was at 10:35, and I would stay up until 11:35, and that's why I was late for school every day, Mrs. Sanders. I'm sorry. So yeah, I watched it back and forth. I got in, I think around the fifth season, sixth season, something like that. And just they played it in order, thankfully. So I was able to watch every episode, that's the way you had to do it. If you missed a night, oh, well, you got to wait, a couple more years before it comes back around again.
Yeah.
So it was cool. But
TNG, your series, right? That was your entree series.
Yeah, TNG was really my intro there. Yeah, like I said, I saw the TOS movies, which were pretty cool, but I still haven't, really given TOS the attention that I should. But I've seen every other series many times over.
How did you get wrapped up in Track?
So I've been working with Leo, who is he's the assistant Trek director. Obviously Garrett Wong and Kim, he's our Trek director. So all of us are assistants to the assistant Trek director. But I've been working with him. We worked on a show called That Sci-Fi Guy. We actually were roommates back in the day and got to know each other real well and became good friends. And we worked on a few different shows, a few different projects creatively. And he knew that I was good for stuff like that. So when he started working in Track, we started to do the event descriptions. And I'm a decent writer. That's kind of my shtick. So he called on me to help out with that a lot. So I got to do some cool stuff. There's one where we had William Shatner one year, and I got to write the description. And I don't know if either Shatner never saw this, which is more likely, or he saw this and he approved of it. But I was like, mere actors come and go, but the shat is everlasting. That was the last line on that one. I'm going to take that as tacit approval that Shatner liked that. So yeah, I did a few of those, and it just kept on coming back year and year. We would get on the phone with Garrett, and we just run through and do all the descriptions, which leads me to a sort of embarrassing story about me that involves Veronica, because Veronica and I we have some mutual friends, and we were together at a wedding one year. And we were sitting at the same table, and we started talking about like Star Trek and everything. It's like, oh yeah, well yeah, I help write the track descriptions at Dragon Con. And you're like, oh yeah, well I do felt nerdy. And it's like, oh yeah, I think I wrote that track description, and you're just like, oh, your face just like fell. Apparently, I did a terrible job writing that description, so I apologize for that.
That's hilarious.
Because we didn't have much to go on. I was like, cool, it's a puppet show. Let me see what I can do. And I was like, I put a little joking joke in there. I was like, cool, this is great. I think it's awesome. And everybody's like, yeah, that's cool. And then I met her, and it's like, oh, I have done something wrong.
Oh my gosh.
I have no memory of that.
I'm glad.
That's not
so
surprising
glad
if you've listened to us. That's not surprising at all.
I'm so glad you don't remember that. That's the great thing about me. It's like I remember every embarrassing thing I ever did, but thankfully most other people don't.
Right.
That's true. That's true.
Okay, I know this is a tough question, but what is your favorite Trek series?
So yeah, I would say I have a kind of a twofold answer for that. I acknowledge that the best Trek series is DS9, but my favorite is Voyager.
Correct.
Wait, your favorite is Voyager?
The best series is DS9. My favorite is Voyager, just because I like it's just a fun romp. Yeah, but obviously DS9, well constructed. They started to really experiment with the serialized storytelling. Sisko's a great captain. Like, they were really able to find their own bearing after Roddenberry passed, and they were able to have a little bit more control over it. And after Rick Berman went to start working on Voyager, which I just said that was my favorite, but I do have some problems with Berman. But that's obviously not counting any of the currently running ones, because we have to wait until they're completed before I feel like you can really put them on the pantheon.
That's a good point.
Okay. Go ahead, Keith.
So I was real quickly. It was funny. A friend of the show, Matt Sweatman, we were just talking about on Facebook about Voyager, and one of the things we were talking about how it's kind of bland, because it kind of feels like TNG, that it feels like it didn't live up to its potential. And that's not a criticism, because I actually like it. So what is it you like about Voyager? Because there's tons of people who love Voyager.
Yeah. That's something about that cast really clicked for me. I mean, I obviously I grew up on TNG. So the first time when I was watching DS9 as it was coming on the air, I kind of lost track of it in like season 1 or season 2. I was like, oh man, what's all this Bajoran religious politics? This is terrible. I don't know. And then I got on, and then like when Voyager came back, I was like, yeah, this is better. I love this. But then years later, I'm like, oh wait a minute, DS9 was great. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. Now I'm into the religious politics stuff. Like now I'm like, yeah, this is. The world's terrible. So,
and Voyager is really your favorite because of your track director, right?
No, yeah. I mean, actually, so I'll tell you the truth. Like, I actually have a signed picture of him from back before I was working with Trek. Like, I snuck into Walk of Fame one day, and like I managed to get a couple of signatures, but it's not on the wall right now because it fell down. It's like it hangs underneath Data and Worf over there. Nice. But I was like, also, like, he's kind of my boss now, and it's kind of weird to have a framed signed picture of your boss on the wall. So maybe it doesn't have to come back up anytime soon. That's fine. It can sit there.
Okay, I've got one last question for you, and I don't think we've ever asked this of any of our other guests. So this is a first. What's your favorite or favorites Star Trek uniform?
Oh, that's very good. I think just the classiness of the gray shoulders, late DS9 first contact uniform. That's got to be it for me. I mean, I'm a big fan of the TNG regular uniform and even the colored shoulder one. But yeah, something about that jacket. It's like patterns, textured. Yeah, and it fits over there, and you can still see the rank can still be seen clearly. And you've got the turtleneck, which I don't normally like turtlenecks, but it really works in that situation. Yeah, so that's my favorite, I think, of all of them.
Man, I agree. That's my favorite too. Yeah. I've got some other favorite.
This is why we get along on panels.
Right, I'm telling you.
And those uniforms. It's funny because it's a tie between those, the ones that you said of DS9 and that, because they also represented a change in the show. The show was darker at that time.
Yep.
And the other ones I absolutely love is frankly the ones from Enterprise.
Yep.
Because they are the most
Okay.
yeah, they are the
Mechanic
most
outfit?
realistic space uniforms in Star Trek.
Yeah.
They have pockets. I mean, I hate to say that.
Yeah.
I love them. They look right.
Yeah.
You could go work in a sewer in that one, and you wouldn't look out of place.
Yeah.
A space sewer in the future.
I like the lower deck uniforms.
Okay.
Yeah,
I like
those are
those
great.
too.
Good in
Yeah,
cartoons
they're
and in real life.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
So, what do you think about how they brought him over to Strange New Worlds? Do you think that
That's
they did a good
amazing.
job with that? Yeah, I
Yes.
think they were awesome.
Yeah.
Because everybody's been making the fan-made ones that were, trying their best to look like the animated version, but when they put them in the Strange New Worlds, like, oh, that's how it's done. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what do you like, Charles, uniforms?
Oh, I'll go season 1 TOS.
Of course you
Yeah.
would.
with the
Oh,
line.
those are great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I like
the
season
sport
1
is also
TOS,
good.
the gold, the season 1 gold, not the season 3 gold, but then
Yeah.
with those black pants with a little flare at the leg and the black collar, just great action adventure outfits. They just really pop.
Yeah.
And the colors of them really pop.
Plus, they're very easy to make for puppets.
True. I wouldn't say very easy, but easier.
Easier.
Right.
They left skirts in season 1, like the male like dress uniform, like
Yeah.
skirt uniform.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, we're gonna bring it back. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. Pretty much.
But I own one of those, and it's very good on like hot nights in the middle of September, so it's great.
True.
Okay.
Have you ever worn that at Trek Track?
I wear it at the dance only, like
okay.
at the 10 forward party. That's the place for that. Like I don't see myself like doing my normal like duties in the track room all day with the skirt on.
Right.
That's a party time one.
Right, man. I don't blame you. Okay, so you brought a topic for us to discuss.
Yes.
And tell us what the topic is that you selected and why you picked it.
Sure. So one thing I tend to think about a lot is the mechanics and the origin and how it works, food replicators. So we've got a few different eras that we can think about, like, you had the early synthesizers that were in Enterprise. We had the great comment during that Q&A session where like somebody asked, what happens to your poop? And like, Archer's like, Trip, I think you should take this. I'm like, really, Captain? The poop question? But then he tells us that they get turned into boots. And I'm like, well, I guess they're not making poop into food yet. No, that wouldn't come later. That wouldn't come until Discovery. So.
Right.
But I do wonder, I think a lot about like, how do they work? Like, do you have, a specific recipe that you put in there and like, okay, well, this is a burger that you got at McDonald's, but it was a burger at McDonald's specifically on Stardate 50122.3. And like, that's the only version. Like every piece of food in there, is it the same every time you replicate it? And maybe that's why certain characters say that they don't like replicated food.
Yeah.
They're just having it this exact same every time. And they're like ready to move on. Because if you think about it, like you can make, if you make a ham sandwich at home, that's going to be different every single time you make it. But if you get it out of the replicator, it might be exactly the same.
That's interesting that you say that too. And especially interesting that you use the McDonald's example, because McDonald's pretty much churns out exactly the same thing every time.
No.
They must have a replicator in the back.
No.
Well, that's
No.
the goal.
This came up on
That's their
our
goal. But
anniversary episode that's not out yet, but specifically with McDonald's as an example.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
That is funny. So I'm wondering, like, they're really kind of sketchy about it. So there's a lot of areas that you're just, as a fan, you're just left to fill in the details of like, what's the raw materials look like? These are, if you're breaking it down at a molecular level, surely you can have, Joseph Sisko's jambalaya will be perfect every time.
Right.
And I do wonder, like, is it just a narrative tool that they have? Certain characters don't like the replicated food. Is the food that they eat on the ship, like for example, in Enterprise, they had meat. They would eat meat. And I'm like, how close was that to the meat that we have now? Is that like, is that cloned meat? Because we can do cloned meat now. Or did they have big vats of it downstairs? And like the chef would just have to send somebody go down to get the new, meat pile.
God, that sounds disgusting.
I know. As a vegan, I think about these things. And like, because there's always the question is replicated food vegan? Well, I mean, they don't have cows and chickens running around the starship. So, it's not made from animals one way or another.
I think
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I think you make a very good point about the evolution of replication because in Enterprise, which is of course is a newer show than the original series, they tried to be retro, and they originally talked about protein resequencers. They didn't talk about specifically replicators. And I think by the time of TNG, we may think of replicators as kind of sort of like transporters, where they're doing matter to energy conversion. We don't know. And in the original series, there's a famous episode, Charlie X, where Kirk says, the Earth Day is Thanksgiving. The crew has to eat synthetic meatloaf. I want it to look like turkey. And later on, there's a whole thing where Charlie X has these powers, and the dude who's supposed to be chef, it's actually Gene Roddenberry. He's blurting out that there's turkeys in the kitchen, real turkeys. It's really cool. Enterprise always got the idea that was real food, whether it was grown meat or not, because they made a big deal when they had some Vulcan guests on Enterprise. They made a big deal of talking about it was actual steak. It was those Vulcans who didn't subscribe to logic. And Trip Tucker with his famous pecan pie, they always made it seem like it was real pecan. So I think it evolved over the years. It seems like.
Yeah.
So technically, if replicated food is made out of human waste, then all of it is non-vegan.
Well, I mean, human waste is donated with consent, right? That's the thing about veganism is animals can't consent. So if it's donated with consent, I mean, cannibalism can be vegan if it's consensually given.
And seeing it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Nick. If by the time of TNG, if you're taking human waste and you are using something like the transporter to molecularly change it, it can be vegan because you can literally change protein molecules into vegetable. And so it really is matter energy conversion, possibly, if that's what they're doing.
Here's something I have never thought about before. Since we're talking about poop, if you eat a hamburger and then you poop and then you eat a replicated hamburger, how does that affect your poop? Do you poop different stuff?
Okay.
Can a second generation poop be as usable for food stock as a first generation poop? We'll say.
Here's the thing:
nutrients came out of it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like while you're programming these items, why would you not stop and make them healthier? Why would you not stop and add more fiber? So that maybe your replicated burger poop is better than the regular burger poop.
Well, it's funny. Point. I have two thoughts. My first thought is I can't wait to see what Charles is going to use to post this show. He's going to select. And the other one, I think it goes back to again is what is the replicated food? If it's true meat that's just been produced through the replication system, it's going to be just like regular meat you eat. It might be like extra lean beef. If it's some kind of weird vegetable matter, like that synthehol, which is kind of like alcohol, but not, it's going to be different.
You would think to a replicator, you could say, I'll have a chili cheese slaw dog and onion rings, 120 calories total. And
exactly.
Yes.
True. So here's another thing that I was thinking about when we were preparing for this episode, and by prepare I am using big air quotes because I didn't prepare that much, but I was wondering if the way that the synthehol is described, or that I've seen it described, is that it's alcohol that doesn't have a lasting effect. You can get buzzed off of it, but you can will away the effects of it. So I'm just wondering if you eat a huge a replicated meal, can you just will away the calories? Can you can you will away the feeling of being full? So can you eat as much as you want and just stuff your face, and then 10 minutes later there's no lasting effect of it?
I think it depends on what's
Troy ate a lot of chocolate, so
but but there was actually, I think it's interesting, but you remember there was one episode where Troy basically told the replicator, I don't want whatever chocolate. She said something like, I don't want synthesized chocolate sundae. She wanted a real chocolate sundae, as if she was emphasizing, I want the fat, I want the sugar, I want the unhealthy stuff. And so I tend to think, like what you were saying earlier, Nick, that I think that by default, if you order a shake or ice cream or a burger, it's probably kind of sort of healthy. I bet they cut the calories in the fat. And then if you tell it, look, like you said, Charles, I want a cheese dog, chili cheese dog. I want a real one. And don't hold the calories and don't hold the fat. I think it's absolutely capable of giving you something that's horribly bad for you.
Do you have to do like safety protocols like on a holodeck?
Yeah, you have to.
It looks like you
Put a
do.
code in.
Nice.
Computer
I think you might have
disengages
to.
safety protocols.
Yeah,
Right.
it looks like you might have to. And I bet that came in place somewhere between Kirk's time and Picard's time, because in Kirk's time, like when they're drinking booze and stuff, it's the real deal. You don't ever, when they want to have something real, it's real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another thing about this topic that I always have loved, and that is on Voyager, where you have to save replicator rations and everything is at a premium, and you have to find foodstuffs, and Neelix has to cook meals, and he has to cook meals for the crew.
Yeah.
And that was something that that was a detail that I always really loved about Voyager. You know, I think that Voyager a lot of times didn't do enough to kind of emphasize the fact that this is a ship that's completely cut off from its source, that it's lost. It has to fend for itself. It has to collect supplies. The one thing that they did do really well with that was the food.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, because you're right with the replicator rations, because you think about it, as you say, they're 70,000 light years from Earth when they start, and they have no guarantee that they're going to have energy to do everything. And replicators take energy, and heck, for that matter, those sonic showers they're having in the future should. You're right, and the running joke became Neelix made everything with Leola root.
Yeah,
it's like the running thing. But hey, and Veronica, you know who the greatest cook was in Voyager?
Paris.
No, it was Tuvix.
Oh God!
No, that's right.
Oh,
Leola root sticker.
Leola root. Wow, I've never seen one. Wow, you have a Leola root sticker. You win.
Yeah, along with Neelix's hat. So
there you go.
I backed the Voyager documentary and I got that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nick, I was messing with Veronica because the Tuvix thing, every now and then it comes up and we'll have that little debate. And I was saying, Tuvix is evidently the greatest cook in the history of Voyager, because everybody loved Tuvix's food.
That's
everybody. Then they killed it.
But we have to make a conscious effort not to get on the Tuvix route.
We'll be here all night.
Someone mentioned earlier that you could program a replicator to just recreate like Joseph Sisko's jambalaya. But I bet Joseph Sisko would taste it and spit it out.
That's not it.
It's way off.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, like, if you're eating a hamburger you got at a Starbase or something, could you just like tricorder it, be like, I want this exact hamburger?
Yeah. Can you scan it and and is there like an open source community of people that are doing different recipes? Like, this is my take on tiramisu versus the one that's already replicated in there. No, I want Funny Boy 29's tiramisu. That's the best tiramisu.
And on Chuck's question, I've always wondered about that. When you're doing a replicated anything, leg of lamb, hamburger, a salad, whatever, you can see that it would replicate the taste. What about the texture? Does it feel like you're eating a hamburger, or does it feel like lettuce crunching in your teeth? And when you're talking about Sisko's jambalaya, that's a very specific thing, and Sisko has a very specific idea of what it should taste like and feel like. And how close can a replicator get to that?
Well, essentially, a replicator works the way a transporter does. Like, you could beam up a cheeseburger, but only this is a stored pattern that you just beam down every time, and you don't have to beam it up to begin with. So I would think it would be, to you or I, just like a hamburger. But I mean, like you said, we've seen people throughout Star Trek who prefer non-replicated food.
Yeah.
But that could also be, I mean, where are they starting from with these? Like, if there's only, I mean, here on Earth, there's a million different recipes for hamburger.
Yeah.
So it could just be that, people don't like the ones that are in the system, or who's picking them, or it could be that in making them healthier, they're altering the taste.
Yeah, true. But we've also seen examples in various series of people who talk about tweaking the programming to get a recipe just right, to get something to taste the way that they want it to taste. So, and it seems like Tom Paris was doing that. I don't remember specifically, but that's the face that comes to my mind. But that's an interesting point too, where it is just a pattern, a program that's stored in the system, but it's editable.
Along those lines, I remember a couple of months ago, I watched this. I read this Facebook thread that went on for a surprisingly long time, and someone asked in Facebook, "What food tastes better when it's slightly burnt?" And there was everything like pizza and bacon and stuff. And to what we're all talking about, I'm sure if you order a pizza from a replicator and they think this is the best pizza, it's probably not going to be burnt. But sometimes the best pizza is burnt and just so that's why, because like you say, and on Voyager, Janeway was always babbling about, she was like, I slaved over a replicator all day long for this meal. What? Yeah, but like you said, she's probably adjusting salt content and texture and whether it's rare or medium well and something like that. So I think this, like Chuck said earlier, I think there's going to be a generic hamburger in the database.
Yeah.
And it may not taste like, for all you know, it tastes like a White Castle burger and you want a Whataburger. That's a Texas thing. And then you got to tweak it.
No, we have them here now.
No, it's a Georgia thing.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, we have Whataburgers now.
Yeah, that's right.
One other thing I was going to say real quick, Chuck, on the comment about Benjamin Sisko's jambalaya. I think there's two things there too, possibly. Is it made out of real shrimp, real meat? And the other thing is knowing, not Benjamin, his dad, if you told him it was replicated, I kind of wonder if he was like, this sucks, even if it tastes fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he would.
Yes.
He would just be insulted
100%.
by having to eat. Yes.
Yeah.
So, like, Riker at some point, I believe, was the one that made this comment about we no longer enslave animals for food purposes. But then you see Sisko when he goes home, he's shucking oysters. It's like, I mean, is it okay to go wild catch the oysters, or were those replicated in the shell and then you still have to shuck them?
That's so interesting. I'd never thought about that before.
Yeah, and O'Brien in one episode in TNG was telling Keiko how his mom served meat, and Keiko was freaking out. She's like, "Your mom touched real meat, and she cut it with her hands." And he was like, "Yeah, like a master chef." And then he said he was going to make her some real meat, and she was kind of freaking out.
But she liked it though, didn't she? Just like the first time Hank Hill tastes the hamburger cooked over charcoal instead of propane. and Bobby is like, "Mom, what is that?" And she says, "That, Bobby, is flavor."
That's a point though, because maybe one thing that's hard to replicate is the environmental conditions that the food is prepared in.
It's intangibles. I mean,
going to a crappy diner in the middle of the night. There's imperfections that make their way into the food that affect the taste.
Yeah.
And
so one of the things is like when the cooks that are actually making it, like, this may be a little gross, but skin flakes will come off, like there's part of like what comes off of your body while you're making it. No matter how many times you wash your hands, there are intangibles that are going to get in. And sometimes that makes a nice flavor.
Yeah.
Or
back to that cannibalism
for years. Yeah.
Or like the whole story, the New Yorkers will say that their pizza tastes better because of the New York water. That's actually the first ingredient for the pizza dough. And that makes it taste better than Detroit pizza or whatever other kind of pizza.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, they got the soft water up there. There's a place in Alabama that actually like trucks its water down from New York so that they can make classic New York pizza.
Really? Wow.
They go to the length.
That
that has to be expensive pizza though.
Yeah, for sure.
Jesus.
Okay, now see, that's when I need a replicator business. I could be replicating that water in my backyard and charging them a mint.
Water.
Oh my gosh, Keith.
Yeah, I kind of think that I think Charles brought up the hamburger. That's probably the best example. I kind of think there's probably two options. The hamburger is either something completely healthy, like an Impossible Burger, and it might be 100% non-meat, just supposed to taste like it, or Kirk talking about the synthetic meatloaf, or it's real meat, but as you say, it's just a real generic meat that's also very healthy. And then you're like, hey, this thing sucks. I need some salt in it. I need, like they may serve you the equivalent of 70% fat and you want 95% fat or something like that.
Yeah, they take all the cholesterol out and they'll probably put in like potassium chloride instead of salt. So that it's all kind of, it tastes salty, but is there something weird about it? So, there's plenty of opportunities to make something a lot healthier.
Right.
Yeah, because even in even as a Picard, there's still the 25th century, and like Picard's Vineyard is still producing wine that's made with grapes.
Yeah.
When replicators are very well established by that point. You would think that, I guess there's just, an actual bottle. You're not going to replicate a bottle of wine and then keep it on a shelf for X years.
Right.
I would guess that's, I
Now,
wonder
there's certain things that go into the aging of alcohol. So.
I wonder if you can. Have we ever heard someone order alcohol like aged from a replicator?
Yeah, give me a 50-year vintage right now, just straight out the replicator.
No, because
I can't think of an example of that.
Every time they drink alcohol or spirits that we think are real, somebody's always babbling about they had a bottle they've been saving, but everything out of the system is always synthehol. I don't remember anybody say replicated Romulan ale. You know, like McCoy said he had somebody flying it in across the neutral zone. Picard is always keeping a ball of something hidden somewhere.
Yeah, Data had to take Scotty down to the bar and like looked underneath, raided Guinan's stash for the green stuff.
Yeah,
that's right.
Are you familiar with the "It's Green" comment, Nick?
Oh, it is green. Yes.
Yeah. Are you familiar with that from the original series?
Oh no! I guess was that a callback when they did it in Next Gen?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, in that when the Scotty is doing it, and he's in his cups by then, and he literally does something corny, like he kind of blows on it, like it's got dust on it. It's so old, even though it's on a starship. But that was the thing there, is every time they had something to drink, you always get the impression that they had bottles of it somewhere that they hoarded. And that makes a point you raised earlier, Charles, is it's synthehol by the time of TNG. If some low-ranking ensign at the end of the day goes to Replicator and says, look, I want a stiff whiskey and I want a real one, I wonder if like his supervisor has to sign off on it. Can you order real alcohol in the middle of the day from a Replicator, like the one that'll get you drunk? Is that even possible?
Right. If you're on shift, I'm sure you're like locked out of certain options.
Yeah.
Well, we saw on lower decks that even there's rank captain's privileges that you get better replicator accesses as you advance in the rank.
Right.
That they can get food from the officer's replicator that you couldn't get from a lower decker's replicator.
Yeah, there's like a different selection that you had access to. So that's interesting. There's these artificial scarcities.
That is so tacky. Why would you do that?
Right.
And you
got to have something. You're not going to get more money.
There's a special replicator in that lower decks episode.
Yeah.
Mm. Oh yeah.
Technology from that Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that access for Aliens. I saw a discussion about, and it made sense. It came up was, why would you go to Quarks for food?
Yes.
And you have Replimats on the station. So why would you go to Quarks? And some people would say, well, does Quark serve real food that's not replicated? Or somebody else made a very good point, which is maybe Quark has access to more replicated food programs than others. Like he has a bigger database.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that's the case.
Extra stuff.
Well, Quark also imports things.
Yes.
So I would think that Quark would have maybe a variety of selections that aren't offered by the replicator system. But also you would go to Quarks for the atmosphere.
That's what I was going to say. For the socialization, for the fun, for the, but also, I'm sorry, you just have to have fresh, you have to have real, you cannot have replicated yamak sauce. There's just
or jom sticks, whatever the heck those things are.
I'm going to trade my stem bolts for that. It's got to be real.
Right.
That's a very good point, because I was actually going to ask you all a question is, do you think in real world, and sometimes you can't say Western world or whatever, in the real world 200 years from now, if replicated food is an option, do you think most people would just accept replicated food and not even worry about cooking from scratch anymore? Because it's happening to a certain extent now. Think so?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think just like we had TV dinners in the 60s or whatever, people started to really just rely on prepared packaged food. And if you do that, you're going to have, if you have the option to prepare and package anything, then why not just live on that?
I had an idea. Let's take a quick commercial break.
Funny.
That was supposed to
know we were going to talk nonstop about replicated food.
Well, Alan hits me.
That was supposed to go in the private chat, not in flipping comments.
And then you put it up on the main screen.
I know. Yeah. I was trying to delete it.
Does anybody else see that? Or
I think it's time for a break.
Oh my gosh.
Okay,
we'll be right back after this commercial.
Attention, people of Earth!
Turned on the TV late last night.
Cause I felt nerdy.
Saved the galaxy from a fright.
Cause I felt nerdy. Turned on my TV late last night, cause I felt nerdy. Then my gravity and took flight, cause I felt nerdy.
Exterminate, exterminate, okay, destroy. I have to go. Having some problems up here. Good luck, stay safe, see you soon.
And we're back.
Yay! So part 2 should be talking about where we think it could potentially go from what we have right now, because there's a lot of stuff going on already with people attempting to print meat and attempting to make it have the right texture. And I listened to a podcast about that, not recently, but recently-ish in the last year. But of course, being me, if I had listened to it yesterday, I wouldn't remember it. But it was really interesting about like basically 3D printing food, which is basically replicated food.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's like a precursor to it. I hate though on Star Trek when they just use an actual 3D printer
Yes!
as a replicator, like no one can tell. That drives me nuts. But yeah, I mean, I think if we had the option, like if you could, if we had a 3D printer in our kitchen and we could 3D print a steak, and it actually tasted like a steak, I would choose to do that.
If it tasted close enough to a steak, I would just do that over cooking.
Right.
Every time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if it didn't, I would prefer to have an actual steak.
Right.
Yeah, and then the people who really care about cooking are the people who are going to be doing the cooking. Like, Joseph Sisko runs a restaurant because he likes to cook. He likes the way that the food tastes when he prepares it that way. It's been in his family for a long time. Riker likes to make terrible eggs because that's what he wants to have.
Yeah, he doesn't even know the difference between scrambled eggs and omelets. Yeah.
He can make pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
apparently learned how.
Yeah. So like you were saying earlier, Veronica, too, then therefore in the future, 200 years from now, we would probably mostly be a replicated food society because people probably wouldn't want to cook.
I'm completely and totally positive of that. I mean, look at the number of people that are using DoorDash and Uber Eats and all that kind of stuff, especially since the pandemic. Everyone's like, oh, hey, look at this convenient thing. I don't even have to leave my house and get food. I mean, they're already doing something like that. If they could almost literally do the same thing and they don't even have to do anything on an app or talk to anyone ever, don't even have to communicate at the door. Heck yeah.
I would have to lock myself out of the replicator. If there's no safety protocol on that thing, I would have, because that's too tempting. I mean, I can't walk to the kitchen. If I get up at 2 a.m. and there's anything on the counter, I'm going to try it. Or any left in the fridge, I'm having a taste. Like I couldn't walk past a replicator at 2 a.m. and not end up eating something.
Right.
And you have unlimited energy in the future because it's fusion or antimatter power. So you wouldn't have any kind of weird prescriptions against using it.
Yeah. And then you have to worry about your spouse or partner locking you out of the replicator. If you get soggy in the middle,
Putting some replicator restrictions.
Right.
It's interesting how, like, we were talking about like unlimited resources. I feel like the TNG era was definitely a bubble. Because it felt like nobody was really worried about we're going to have plenty of resources for anything that comes up. We're not worried about replicating anything. But you went from Enterprise where poop became boots to Next Gen where it's just raw materials, and then you're on to Discovery where poop becomes food now. So the whole cycle of life, I guess.
Yeah, they went from
the waste reclamation on like the 24th century shows, but they just never told you what they did with the waste once they reclaimed it. Yeah. But yeah, it makes sense that it would go back into the energy reserves of the ship.
I mean, when you break it down to individual molecules, like that molecule isn't going to taste like poop.
It's going to be it's going to be
its own thing. It's hydrogen, it's whatever it is.
It's carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, phosphate, and then it has no taste whatsoever, so you wouldn't know. It's Soylent Green. And you don't know.
Oh yeah, wow.
People.
Do they still cremate or bury people, or do they go back into the system?
Yeah. Well, that's a thing in our society now too. So it's and also I think, since you're a vegan, Nick, and what Veronica said, I think there's also a very realistic thing about replicated food, which is saving the environment. Because I'm a Texan and I eat beef. But cattle are literally one of the most, damaging animals on the face of the earth because of how much land they take. They produce a lot of methane, so they're contributing to global warming. Raising animals is really hard on the planet. Yeah, that's just truth.
Over 50% of our available land, or actually, no, almost 50% of our available land is dedicated to livestock. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and people have been thinking about it. I've read some articles like, okay, well, getting ready for the early days of actual human space travel in real life. What are they going to eat? And they're like, well, obviously we're not taking cows, we're not taking pigs or chickens up there. So they're thinking about things like, cloned salmon meat. There's a way like you grow it in a vat there. You've got the resources to get the basic cells to start it, and then you can just work on it in there and actually grow things like they did in the hydroponics bay in Voyager.
Yeah. And a lot of that is, again, back to what Veronica said, I think that's generational, because I try to be forward looking, but even when I hear about grown meat in a vat, I have an automatic revulsion to it. I just, it's like the joke you see in every comedy you've ever seen.
Slaughterhouse is fine.
Yes, exactly. I mean, everything you've seen from Three Stooges to comedy movies, somebody's eating something that's delicious and then they tell them what it is and then they spit it out. I'm kind of like that with grown meat. If I had it and it tastes delicious, I'm like, this is great. Where is it? And I grew in the vat.
That's the other arboretum we don't see. We just see
it's on the meat vats. Those are on level 37.
Right.
That's a good point. I never thought about something like that. So back to the thing about replication. So why does Picard therefore have a vineyard? What is the point of it? Is it because it's different from what you get?
Yeah, food is art. Just like Joseph Sisko's restaurant, he's making art there. That's the thing he loves to do. He's passionate about it. People that work on vineyards choose to do that. Their basic needs are all taken care of. They don't have to do that. They're not making extra money for it. But presumably, it might be some kind of like secondary market. They're definitely well sought after. Like, it's hard to get the Picard vineyard stuff for some reason, but it's not because you have to pay for it. It's because it's just hard to get. So I think there's an art to it. There's a sense of pride that comes with building something that is sought after by other people and recognized by other people being good. I just think that's how it works.
That just raised an interesting thought, what you said, Nick. Okay, so let's say the average person in the future doesn't know anything about wine. So they replicate wine, and like Chuck said, it's a generic wine and it tastes fine. Then you order a Chateau Picard, and it's unique because Picard's tweaked it, or the weather was bad. Or I don't know, maybe he controls the weather of his vineyard, and it has a very slightly different taste. Are you allowed to replicate a Picard bottle of wine once you get it, and therefore you basically have shut Picard out of the market? Or would the replicator be programmed when he get a copyright where you could not replicate Picard wine?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, once you get that one bottle, you don't need them anymore.
That's right.
Yeah, but they don't need money, so why would it matter?
Well, it's credit, just like the Doctor's novel on the Doctor's Hollow novel on Voyager. Like, he wanted to have credit; he didn't want that to be used and taken away from him.
Yeah,
it's
still name recognition.
Would not want it to be made by anybody.
And there will always be people who want the authentic experience, whether it's better or whether it's not. There's people today who are that way.
Yeah.
So your Picard's wine may have some weird watermark on it that says actually grown from grapes, and maybe if you tried to say I want a Picard whatever, the replicator may say copyright infringer, and it won't let you. Let you do a Picard bottle.
Well, just like any of us, if you had a cheese that was imported from Germany, say, and you're serving it at a cocktail party, you're going to tell people this cheese is from Germany. You got to try the cheese from Germany. And people are like, "Ooh, the cheese from Germany." It might taste exactly the same as the cheese from but the fact that we're having cheese from Germany. It's the same sort of thing. This is real wine that was grown in a vineyard and aged for however many years. Like, ooh. It's something special and finite, whether it's more than just a copy out of a replicator would be.
Yeah, it's like, I guess in a way, it's kind of like you can go to an AI art generator and you can get that to generate whatever you want, or you can go to a real artist, and that's going to be a whole different experience.
Absolutely.
But an AI generator is not going to do an exact copy of the Mona Lisa. So you can't hang a Mona Lisa in your office. It's always going to be a little different. Now, but when you're talking about replicators in Star Trek, you could have a Mona Lisa all you want.
With the brush strokes and the pigments and everything.
Right. So where does the origination of artistic expression start and end in a replicator society? And how do you monetize it? I know there's no money, but there's credits, and there's gold press latinum, and there's all this other stuff. So you got to be able to find a way to monetize this thing where you have produced a pattern that gets used in other venues and they pay a royalty.
I'll throw in something here that I noticed in Picard that it kind of bothers me, but when he's drinking, so he's switched to decaf Earl Grey. But if you look at the cheap tea bags, they're Twinings tea bags. So like, okay, did the Earth government take over and like, okay, yeah, we'll take Twinings. That'll be in the replicator. Or is Twinings still out there making tea? Who knows?
Yeah.
Honestly, like I always thought Twinings was, mid-level tea. I wouldn't say this is the best tea I've ever had.
No,
I had growing up, so definitely mid-level.
Yeah.
and I guarantee you,
That's the tea we want.
I guarantee Patrick Stewart would hit you if you served him Twinings tea and he saw you coming out with a Twinings tea bag, because there's been a little controversy just yesterday or so. An American scientist or chemist said she found the secret for the perfect tea, and it's adding a pinch of salt to your tea. And over on BBC, they were kind of outraged by it. And the United States government, tongue in cheek, actually issued a formal statement that we're not saying that anybody in America can make tea as good as British people
Right.
can.
Right.
Avoid an international incident.
But there are chefs that swear by the fact that if you're doing a confection, if you're doing a dessert or something like that, a slight pinch of salt in your chocolate, in your icing, whatever it is, makes it taste sweeter. It amplifies the flavor of whatever it's added to.
Yeah, I can believe that. I think that makes sense.
I frequently add salt to my wine.
Salt?
I don't. I'm kidding. Just to make it taste more like wine.
Salt does some weird stuff. Yeah, like, just my experience, like making black-eyed peas, in the Instant Pot. If you don't use any salt, they get kind of mushy. If you use like a half a teaspoon of salt, they stay together. They keep their little their skins on. We call them jackets, but they keep their little jackets on, and they cook better. And you don't taste the salt really. It's not enough to really get into the flavor, but it's enough to affect the chemical composition, and it makes it cook better.
Buddy, I knew we were good friends, but I didn't know that you were also a connoisseur of the black-eyed pea, which I freaking love.
Love them. Yeah. And they cook quickly too. So like,
right.
Some of them are like this one, like black-eyed peas are 6 minutes in the Instant Pot. Some of them are like 30, 35, 40. It just depends on the bean.
Right.
I got to tell you, I have never eaten a black-eyed pea cooked less than like an hour or two.
Yeah.
But then my folks was from the country, so it was old school. And not the girl shout Nick, so it had to have fat back in it and all that other kind of stuff.
Instant Pot's like a little time machine. It just compresses time inside of it.
Right.
You can get 7 minutes. It's like a couple hours on the stove.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So we should all share our favorite recipes for.
I'm ready.
Let's talk about real food now.
So one of the things I thought about real quick, Nick, because I know we're winding down, is one of the conversations that you see a lot online is people are always asking about replicated stuff in the holodeck. And one of the big things that comes up is how come when Wesley Crusher threw a snowball, it left the holodeck and it hit Picard, yet some of the characters leave the holodeck and they disappear. And there was even the internet is weird. There was this huge debate recently where somebody was arguing, which is what I said when we opened the show, when Moriarty stuffed Dr. Pulaski with crumpets. There are people who literally had serious arguments about when she walked out, did the crumpets disappear? And therefore, could the holodeck be like the ultimate, no offense to anybody who's had this problem, the ultimate anorexic or bulimic thing, where you could go in there and eat like crazy and walk out and it all disappears.
That's what I'm saying. That's totally what I was talking about.
I would say no. I would say the food and stuff in a holodeck is just the same as what you get out of a replicator.
Yeah.
I mean, it's holodecks, transporters, replicators are all interrelated technologies.
Right.
So I would say that the holodeck is replicating the food and the snowball, but it's creating a three-dimensional projection that's not going to be stable outside of the emitters for people because you don't want replicated people running around.
With a couple of exceptions.
Right.
Well, unless you're being invaded by
a couple of exceptions of outside the holodeck.
Right.
Yeah. Unless you're being invaded by the Hirogen or something and you want to instantly have an army.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
But Keith, the real answer, this is an actual answer to why Wesley threw a snowball and it hit Picard. Because it's funny.
That's true. That's what a lot of people say.
Picard didn't think so.
No, that's true. But that's what makes it funnier.
That was season 1 Picard, wasn't it?
Yeah. He didn't think anything was funny back then.
No.
I hate children.
Especially when they throw snowballs.
Yeah, I think the big thing for cooking and eating and natural food in Star Trek is really the community of it. The same thing with like Pike does it.
Yes.
You know, it's a matter. He could just either have everybody over for a replicated meal, but he wants to cook for them, and the food is special to them because he's cooking it for them. So I mean, it's probably the same way with like Sisko's restaurant or Benjamin Sisko or even the Leo route. You know, it's that someone took the time to prepare a meal for you. I think is what people are reacting to, even if it tastes exactly the same.
So the only ingredient that replicators can't make is love.
I love it. That's great. Dude, that's an after-school special.
Oh, that's so funny.
And antimatter.
Antimatter. Love antimatter.
Love antimatter and living beings. That's all.
Charles, you make a really good point, because in that episode we were talking about earlier with Riker and the eggs, you know, Data, who was strangely, inexplicably clueless in the early Star Trek, you know, he didn't know stuff he should have known. Remember, he even says to something like, Riker, you were aware that the replicator can do all this for us? And Pulaski has to explain to him, again, Data's been in Starfleet for 20 years. I don't know why. Remember, Pulaski has to explain to him the coming together to break bread is this old human tradition. And you make a point because Benjamin Sisko had people in his quarters. He cooked for them. And even in Enterprise, where the captain Archer had a really, really small quarters, he often had his officers over for meals. Yeah. And I think that is something that hopefully we won't lose as humanity progresses. I hope we don't.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed the episode, at least one episode, where Janeway is going to cook a meal for Chakotay and is not a good cook,
right?
And doesn't quite get anything right. And I really enjoyed that, because, you know, she's a captain. She ain't got time to stand around a stove. She could just replicate anything she wants, but she took the time to cook a meal. And I thought that was really cool. Now, the other side of that is that I don't think any crew person ever really appreciated the fact that Neelix cooked them a home-cooked meal every night.
That's right.
That's true.
Because nobody liked just cooking.
All day, every day.
Yeah.
He was more like the lunch lady. Like, you don't really appreciate the lunch ladies are making your meal in the cafeteria. Everyone just complains about the meals. But, yeah, I mean, it's... I mean, I would think, especially in the future, when the food is so easy, it does mean something for someone to take the time to prepare a meal for you.
And also, they've been growing up in a society where food just comes out of a replicator. They don't really have a strong sense of how much value goes into a meal.
Yeah,
so they don't realize how much he has to do. Only the ones that work in the kitchen with him know how much he has to do to bring that meal together.
Yeah, and I would think someone like Chakotay would understand, because he was evidently raised in, by their standards, primitive conditions for a while. So I think he knows how to live off the land. Someone like him, but yeah, other people, and obviously O'Brien does, because his mom was still cooking real meat. So
yeah. But you know what? Another thing that I hadn't thought about before is Owosakun in Discovery grew up in a Luddite colony. They did not do technology. Everything they cooked would have been cooked from the land, from the environment in which they lived. So I wonder I really want to get into her backstory, and they're never going to do it on the show. But I wonder what adjustments it was for her to get into the Starfleet lifestyle. You know, I just think that's a fascinating character study.
Yeah, I'm also curious what they would consider a Luddite by the 23rd century. Like, do they have like laptops and cell phones, and they're like, "Oh, you're so primitive."
This guy's still on TikTok.
Right.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking about also.
But you know, that's an interesting idea, because that was one of the running themes, especially in the original series, the famous episode This Side of Paradise with the spores. And you see that a lot in the original series. There's always these colonies of people who, like, they hate society as it is. They're trying to find a place where they can get back to the land. And in that episode, Elias Sandoval and people, they're out there like basically hoeing the rows in the ground and growing their own food. And there was even that crazy episode of Deep Space Nine, that crazy lady Alexis, who artificially suppressed technology on her planet because she felt that humanity had to get back to the land. Yeah, so I guess there will always be people who would reject whatever the current society and the technology is.
Yeah. I'm frequently out there hoeing also, but usually only on Saturday night.
No, that's not.
I knew that was coming back. I'm glad you didn't let me down.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun.
It's a blast.
Tell folks where they can find more of you.
So I actually do a webcomic at treadingground.com that is coming back in 2024. It was something I did back in the early days of the early 2000s to about 2011. Finished it. Now I'm doing a reboot. Everywhere else, you can find me at Nick the Wright and Instagram. I'm on X, but I don't really, I call it X because he's ruined it. It's no longer Twitter to me. I don't really post there anymore, but I am on Mastodon as well and all the other social medias. So that's where you find me.
Nice.
How about you, Keith?
You can find me on Instagram and X and Facebook, primarily the ESNO Network Facebook groups.
And how about you, Alan?
Well, you could find a couple of other podcasts that I do. One of them is Doctor Who A to Z. And we just recorded an episode honoring Tom Baker on not only his 90th birthday, but the 50th anniversary of his debut as Doctor Who. So we have a special episode that'll be coming out tomorrow, assuming that I can get the editing done tonight. And my other podcast is Modern Musicology. And we have just passed finished our second year and are into our third year. And we just did an interview with Catherine Yeski Taylor, who has a new book out called She's a Badass, Women in Rock Doing Something with Feminism. Something that starts with an S. Damn it, and I forgot the word. Anyway, it's a great interview. We really enjoyed it. So go look for those two things.
And how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
That's right. And if you're in the Atlanta area, we're launching our new show February 25th at the Red Light Cafe called the Felt Nerdy and Dirty Show. Details should start coming out on that soon, now that we're getting closer to February. But you can also see us the day before that, February 24th, at the Valentine's Puck and Puppet Show at the Center for Puppetry Arts. We'll be making an appearance there as well. And Veronica, where else can people find us?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And do you have a closing for us this week?
I have one. She doesn't.
I like strawberries.
What's your talent?
Have it your way.
Hey, there we go.
Oh my gosh. All
Everyone
right.
join us next Thursday. We'll go live on Thursdays talking about Star Trek. You can find us on YouTube or Facebook on Thursday. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern. And we'll see you next time.
Take care, y'all.
Yeah.
Bye.